he said, if I focus on the screen, then you'll be in the dark. I said, that's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I appreciate it.
You're certainly welcome. You have to set your priorities.
Oh, where'd you come from? Grand Rapids.
You came all the way from Grand Rapids?
Yep.
Bless your heart.
Well, one of my groomsmen lives in Gaylord, so I'm going there at night.
Okay, welcome to our hot stove night with Jacob Northuis. Is that right?
Northuis.
Northuis. From Pheasants Forever. He's going to talk about Pheasants Forever. He's a regional representative for Michigan, and he just told me that Pheasants Forever is now a habitat organization, and they're interested in all kinds of wildlife and all kinds of habitat. So we'll turn this over to Jacob now and let him do his thing.
Thank you. So yeah, my name is Jacob Northuis. I'm the regional representative for the chapters and volunteers in the state of Michigan here. Little bit of brief intro to me. I grew up Grand Rapids area, southwest side, little town called Jamestown. Probably never heard of it. It had about 700 people growing up, but I grew up outside of Grand Rapids, got my college education up at Lake Superior State University in a degree in fisheries and wildlife management, emphasis in wildlife. And, as a wildlife biologist does, then proceeded to spend 2.5, 3 years of my life bouncing around the rest of the state trying to find a job. Long story short, back in 2017, I got my first introduction to Farm Bill programs and the U.S. Department of Agriculture and that side of wildlife management, and got a job with the Conservation District in Sandusky, Michigan, over in the Thumb. From that job, learned about Pheasants Forever, got more involved. I'd always been a chapter member, but didn't really know much about the organization other than I hunted pheasants. I need to support pheasants, right? Learned more about what they were doing, saw an opportunity to go west and decided, heck, I'm going to take it. Moved out to Idaho in 2019, where I spent 6.5 years of my career with Pheasants Forever. Back in August, I got the opportunity to come home, work with the people and the volunteers, and that's what I kind of loved about this organization, still do love about this organization, is the people. From the high ups all the way down, I've met some of my best friends in my life with the people. So getting to come work with the people of the organization, doing it back in my backyard, it was just a natural marriage. So I came back home. When I got asked to do this presentation, there's just too much that I could talk about with this. I could spend 4 hours talking, but none of you want me here for 4 hours, and I don't want to talk for 4 hours. So the one quote that kept coming back to my mind, and I'm just so happy to be in this state because y'all will understand this quote. If you don't know where to start, go back to the beginning. So that's where I'm going to kick us off here. Back in 1982, Dennis Anderson wrote this article in the St. Paul Pioneer Press and Dispatch. It was during a particularly brutal winter in Minnesota where they were noticing record numbers of die-offs in birds. And Dennis made the call of, hey, we need to do something. We need to do something about our habitat. We need to do something about our management practices because we're losing birds. And the quote that's on here is really the thing that drove a lot of this work. And it was inevitable that marshes would be drained, we say to ourselves. It was inevitable that ditches would be burned. It was inevitable that fields would be plowed each fall, leaving no winter cover for upland birds. And because it was inevitable, it was now tolerable. That quote still gives me a little bit of goosebumps because I feel it in today's culture. But after Dennis wrote this article, people started sending him money and said, do something, Dennis. Do something. Put this money where it needs to go. We need to do something for our birds. And that's where Pheasants Forever was born, from an article in the St. Paul Pioneer and Dispatch. Now, Dennis, he was an advocate for our grasslands. He chose the pheasants for its popularity as a game species in Minnesota, but also because it's kind of the bellwether, the key indicator of the grassland health for an area. This is crucial because Grasslands are our fastest declining and most imperiled ecosystem in the world. Not just the United States, the world. And I've got a little bit of an example of that. So here is a map of grasslands in 1992 provided by the Rangeland Analysis Platform and Cornell University. All that green is historic grasslands. Here's 2021. And I'd like to put a little special emphasis here on northern Michigan. 92, 21. You can see the rate of decline of our grasslands across the country, and it's not good. So that's where Pheasants Forever was born, and that brings us kind of to the mission and vision of Pheasants Forever.
Is that because it's become farmland or something?
Mostly it's converted for agriculture, yes, or urban environments. But agriculture is the largest, because grasslands are the most fertile soils typically other than wetland and edge wetland habitat. So, and it's easiest to turn into farmland. So, not that I'm just, we need our farmers, we need ag. I grew up in a farming community. I've worked 10 years of my life with farmers. I love farmers. I'm not trying to take out farming, but it's just the reality. So PFQF's mission. Our mission is to conserve pheasants, quail, and other wildlife through habitat improvements, public access, education, and conservation advocacy. And then our vision, PF and QF's vision, that current and future generations of hunters and conservationists are able to enjoy abundant populations of wild pheasants, quail, and other wildlife. So our vision, that's remained the same. It's been the same since 1982, maybe a few little tweaks in verbiage, but our vision is largely the same. But our mission has actually grown over our years of existence, over our 40 plus years of existence. And that sets us to our 4 pillars that we abide by in this organization. Increasing wildlife habitat on public and private lands. Educating, engaging, and expanding the upland conservation community. Advancing conservation policies and program funding, and expanding public access to upland wildlife habitat. Those are our 4 pillars. Everything we do in this company is directly tied to those 4 pillars. Now, I know there's a lot of comments that get thrown around about efficiencies of non-governmental organizations and where does your money really go. So I want to show off this slide. This is our breakdown of where our money goes. 91% of all of our funds go directly into the ground for either habitat projects or permanent land protection. When I say permanent land protection, I don't mean we're going to buy the land and you can look but you can't touch. No, these are lands that we're purchasing, transferring to state or federal agencies, and then they become publicly accessible lands for recreation use, whether that be hunting, fishing, camping. We are looking to protect public lands and add to them for public recreation. So, like I said, 91% of our funds goes directly into the ground and into habitat. That puts us at one of the most efficient and effective non-governmental organizations in the country. Next off, I'm going to show you some historical totals that we have here for Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever. These numbers are just starting to get out to the public, so you guys are getting a little bit of a sneak peek on it. But here is our historical numbers that we have produced. 31 million historical acres have been improved by the company. 587,000 plus projects, 490,000 wildlife habitat projects in 2024 alone. Still waiting on final numbers for 2025. And $1.4 billion in historical program expenditures towards wildlife habitat. We also have acquired 1,916 lands for a total of 242,000 acres since 1982, and that number is growing. Some other things from a national level that we present. Here is just a smattering of our programs. Public access to habitat. This is our program to bring public access onto private lands, much like the DNR HAP program, Hunter Access Program. And actually last year it was announced that Pheasants Forever was awarded, Pheasants Forever Michigan was awarded one of the newest programs for this. So Michigan will now have a PATH program where we're going to supplement the HAP program down in the lower third of the state, trying to compete with deer leases, giving a little bit of an increase in funding per acre towards landowners to try to give more access on private land for public hunters. Build a wildlife area. This is our permanent protection arm of the company and program. So this is where our guys are out there focusing on, hey, this is a crucial piece of property. The state wants it. We want to make sure that it goes to the state. State takes a little bit to get their money in order and get the land purchased. We'll come in and buy it. You just pay us back when you get your money in line. So we go in and purchase that property, hold it a year, 2 years, whatever it takes to get the money in order. State pays us back. It now becomes state acres. Journey to Conservation Careers is a relatively new program run by my good buddy Levi. Journey to Conservation Careers is all about building the next generation of wildlife biologists in our country. We provide a lot of free programs, education material, and opportunities and events that younger future biologists, high school, middle school, college-age kids can come in and start learning about the career and getting themselves set up to become, my predecessor and doing even better things than we've gotten to do. Path to the Uplands, this historically was called No Child Left Indoors, but we've expanded it to the Path to the Uplands because we're not just including children, we're including late onset hunters, women hunters, families, anyone that wants to get involved in upland hunting and conservation. This is the program for them. Women on the Wing is our women specifically focused program. Right now in Michigan, we have 2 chapters, both of them on the east side, hoping to expand that soon to the west side. But this is where the ladies can come together and have a group of like-minded ladies and, run a program, run a chapter, run outreach events, fundraisers, but it's all run with like-minded women, which is amazing. My fiance started a chapter back in early 2020s, I want to say, or late teens, early 20s in North Dakota. She loved those ladies, and talking with the ladies over in the Thumb area, they love having that group of like-minded individuals. Milkweed in the Classroom is another one of our education opportunities. This is where a local chapter can sponsor a milkweed kit that will go to a teacher. And part of their lesson plan and curriculum will be teaching kids about milkweed, pollinators, and actually raising it in the classroom to then go out and be able to put plugs on the school property and create new milkweed patches around the area. Habitat University is a huge endeavor that we've launched recently, and this goes hand in hand with that Journey to Conservation Careers. It's an online program where you can learn about wildlife habitat, funding mechanisms, different aspects of the career, different techniques, best management practices. It's all online and it's free. Anyone that's looking to get into the career can use this resource. Pollinator Habitat Outreach Program, that's just us saying, hey, we know we need pollinators for everything in this world. Let's make sure that we're demonstrating that and teaching people why pollinators are so important. Again, if I had 4 hours, I could keep going, but I don't want to keep you that long. There's a lot more that I could keep going on with this company. So from that, I've given you kind of the 30,000 foot view. This is PF National. This is what we're focused on. This is what we do in our program. So I want to zoom this into the state of Michigan now, introduce you to what we're doing here in the state. So this is our staff for Pheasants Forever in the state of Michigan. We have Ben Beeman. He's our state biological coordinator and oversees the 3 below there. Ben has been with Pheasants Forever since 2017, 2018. Great guy, known him for a long time. He does amazing work here in the state. Izzy Franks is actually our newest hire here in Michigan. She is our precision ag and conservation specialist for the southeast portion. Alex Wubben-Zudwag is in the southwest part of the state, same position. Their job is to work with farmers. We're going to make your operation more efficient. We're going to figure out a way to do variable rate irrigation or variable rate nutritional plans, so that way you're not blanket coating fertilizer when you don't need that much on that 40. You only need it here. We're trying to find ways to make operations more efficient, more effective, raise bottom line of agricultural producers, and also be involved with private landowners for creating habitat on their property. There's a lot of people that have property for hunting and recreating. We're there to help with that as well, and that's what those ladies are really good at. Matt Leffler is our education and outreach coordinator. Matt is a retired teacher. He's an amazing man. His whole job is to go around and promote wildlife and outdoor recreation across the state. Matt, you'll find him at state parks on Fridays doing Pheasant Fridays. He has 2 BB gun trailers that get distributed amongst chapters and different meetings and field days and things like that so kids can learn how to shoot. Matt's all over. He's awesome. And so he's our education outreach coordinator. And then myself, I deal with our chapters and volunteers in the state. We have 26 chapters. Oh, I'm actually getting ahead of myself here. So we have 26 chapters here in the state, counting for 8,300 members, which is the 6th most in the country. We have 8,100 PF, 127 QF, 501 of those are a life member or greater, which is also good for 6th in the country. And for perspective on this, we are the 2nd fewest number of chapters in the top 10 behind Wisconsin. We're doing this. Iowa has, I was actually just talking to one of my rep cohorts in Iowa on the way up here. They have 97 chapters in the state of Iowa. And, we're a little bit behind them, but at the same time, we're doing it on a third of the amount of chapters or a quarter of the amount of chapters as some of these other states are. So moving on to some of our accomplishments here in the state of Michigan. These are 2025 numbers for us. Last year, our adopted game area program, which is our public lands. These are all state game areas, wildlife management areas, things like that. We had 399 acres of grassland that was restored or enhanced. 350 acres are planned for this year. And we're working on a brand new 3-year MOA with DNR. Another huge win that we had this year is we signed a new MOA with Michigan State Parks to start working on state recreation areas that allow hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation access. So that will start unlocking some of the potential, such as Wetzel State Game Area, Lake Hudson, some of those areas in the south that are traditionally managed by state parks but allow outdoor recreation on them. Our private land impacts, we had 95 landowners that we worked with in 2025. Which equated to 796 acres of impact. Our education and outreach side, so Matt alone put on 88 events in 2025. That's more than one a week. So he obviously can't be at all of them, but he helped coordinate 88 events 2025, which accounted for 3,500 attendees across the state. We advocated for hunter safeties in school, which actually was just signed into law in January. And then on top of that, our chapters put on over 125 additional Learn to Hunt or Shoot events, habitat project days, fundraising events, community engagement events, etc., etc. As a whole, our chapters contributed $47,500 to national initiative and over $50,000 to local events in their community. The other thing in 2025 is our chapters contributed $68,500 to our Legislative Action Fund. Now, what is the Legislative Action Fund? This is our dedicated group of employees that sit in Washington, D.C. They sit in state levels. We have employees that work all the way from D.C. down to state houses. And their job is to make sure that policy and funding is robust and designed for wildlife management, and that we keep continued funding and make sure that we're doing the right thing for the wildlife. Doesn't matter. We are nonpartisan. We just want the right thing done. Our legislative action team is phenomenal. We have a very big hand in contributing to the Farm Bill, the rewrite, the renewals, all of that every time it comes up. Swanee Evans, our state level director, is amazing at keeping on top of all the different things going on in the states and making sure that the state level is making sound decisions for wildlife and wildlife funding. So in total, Michigan has now eclipsed over $1 million in contributions since 2021 towards making sure that there is federal and state policy for wildlife habitat and funding. And one of our big wins in 2025 was we introduced the Upland Action Center, which makes it easier to contact your elected officials and stay aware of important legislation for wildlife and hunters. This website, you go on it, you sign up for it, and if there's anything that's involved in the state or federal level, you'll get an email that says, hey, you need to show your support for this. Put in your name and your email, and an automatic template will go through to your representatives in your area. If you want to edit it, you can edit it. But if you want to just say, hey, this is important, we want it funded, name and email, it's off to your elected officials. It makes access to this so much easier than having to look up who your official is, get the email, type out a message, get it off to them. 30 seconds, it's out the door. All right, so national, state, let's zoom in a little bit here on the local level. So here's what's happening locally. We have 1,200 members in the 21 tip of the Mitt counties. The only county that does not have a member actually is Montmorency County. That's good for about 14.5–15% of all of our members in the state of Michigan are up in the upper third of the state. With that being said, there was only one event in those 21 counties. There was a ladies learn to shoot event in Grayling just down the road here this fall. So with that being said, I look at these numbers and I see opportunity. This is also built off the fact that my counterpart before me hosted what we call Pint Night over in Bel Air at Shorts. We had 20 to 30 people show up that said, hey, we believe in the mission and we want to do this. So I'm working on revitalizing that. But I mean, the tip of the Mitt is very well represented and believes in our mission. So I see opportunity up here. And you might be thinking, why? There's no pheasants up here. As was said to me earlier, Wild Wings is the extent of our pheasant hunting up here. But what I say to that is all about mission. And I love to highlight the other wildlife. So speaking from personal experience, I spent 6.5 years on the biology team with this company working with sage grouse, migratory big game, and ranchers. I never touched a pheasant project in 6.5 years of working for the company. And that's where, like I was saying earlier, we just care about wildlife. We care about habitat. If it's right, we want it done. So we're all about mission. Quick poll. I want you to raise your hand if you care about one or more of these things. Improving wildlife habitat on public and private lands. Having public lands and access to outdoor recreation. Keeping public lands public. Educating and growing the next generation. Having funding available. So everyone's hands were raised, which means everyone has a direct connection to our mission and our 4 pillars. Another reason why Pheasants Forever is because of our chapter model. Pheasants Forever is unique as we are the only organization that 100% of funding raised by the local chapter stays with the local chapter and they get 100% decision-making control. We don't come in, we don't skim anything off the top, we don't tell you you need to do this. We'll make suggestions, but whatever you raise, you keep, you get to decide. If you want to put it all into habitat, put it into habitat. You want to put it in towards making sure we have advocacy, put it into advocacy. You want to plant pollinator patches all around, plant pollinator patches. You guys get to decide what you do with those funds. And as I said, we're the only organization that does that. Another reason why is we deliver. We're the largest biological workforce in the country. We recently surpassed the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have over 400 biologists in 40 states that are producing habitat on the ground. We're the most efficient and effective wildlife NGO in the country. And we're integral in the continuation and expansion of funding for wildlife. As I said earlier, one of our legislative action team, our government affairs team, he is integral in the Farm Bill every time it comes around. People are asking him for advice. They're seeking his opinion on things. We have representation on the NACA board. Our Chief Conservation Officer, Ron, is often in Congress testifying for wildlife policy. So we're integral in the continuation and expansion of funding for wildlife. And most importantly, for the reason why, here's my reason why. So I'll be honest, I started with Pheasants Forever, and I had the mindset of a young biologist of, I'll be here 3 years, I'll build up my name, and then I'm moving on, and I'm going to find a better job. And then 3 years came and I went, well, I get vested at 6, so maybe I'll stick around till 6. And then 5 years came and I went, well, I might leave if it's the right job. But I'm not just going to leave for any job. And then that conversation turned into, it has to be my absolute dream job that I could never say no to. I'm going to be with this dang company until I retire. And so for me, the why, like I said earlier, it's the people. This group up here in the upper right, myself, the Idaho state coordinator at the time, that's our Arizona state coordinator, Colorado, Montana. Eastern Montana. These are 3 of my best friends. And I made them because of this job. This group of lovable idiots down there in the corner, that's my counterparts in the chapter and volunteer service side of things. This was taken at Pheasant Fest this year. Like I said, I know I can pick up the phone and call any one of them. And, a few of these guys, this gentleman right here, that gentleman in the back, they've already told me, if you want to come out here, just tell me you're showing up and what time you're showing up, and we'll go hunting together, or we'll go fishing together. Or you can just hang out in the backyard if you want. Just tell me you're coming. And the other reason is I love the wide open and feeling like I made a difference. When both those pictures were taken of me hunting on public land that I put projects on. And I feel like I make a difference with this organization because I can see my impact. I can feel my impact. I can harvest a bird and cook it up that night on projects that I did. That sage grouse was likely born the year I put the project in. And so it means a lot to me because I feel the impact. But most importantly for me, my reason why is for the people and the next generation. That's my little setter puppy. You wouldn't know she's a hunting dog yet. She's a little too wild, but I do it for her because that's what she's bred to do. And she will chase squirrels and robins in the backyard till her heart is content. And I'm looking forward to the day that I can start getting her out on wild birds. This is my wonderful fiance, Maddie. This was our first ever upland game bird hunt together and her first ever upland game bird hunt. And I want to make sure that she has habitat until she can't hunt anymore. That's my little nephew fishing at his preschool. He loves fishing. He loves camping. He loves being outdoors. And I want to make sure that he has every opportunity or more than I do. This picture means a lot to me. This was the last hunt my grandfather ever got to go on. It was just a preserve bird hunt, sure, but that memory will forever stick in my brain. That's my entire family right there. My uncles, my cousin, myself, my dad, my grandfather. That's my dad and I. My dad's 64 in that photo. We're standing there looking over one of the most beautiful scenes in eastern Idaho, chasing sharp-tailed grouse. And I want to make sure that he has those opportunities for the next 10, 15, 30 years, however long he can hunt for. And I want to keep making those memories with him. So this is my why. I'm going to leave you on 2 quotes. These 2 quotes have stuck with me throughout my whole career. They mean a lot to me, and I hope they mean a lot to you. One of them is from a very well-respected name, one that you probably recognize. One of them is from that man, my grandfather, who about 1 out of every 10 quotes I can actually say in public. On the left, Teddy Roosevelt. Of all the questions which came before this nation, short of the actual preservation of its existence in a great war, there is none which compares in importance with the great central task of leaving this land even better land for our descendants than it is for us. And then this quote came on the corner of an Iowa cornfield in 2006 when I was 12 years old on my first ever pheasant hunt. If you don't care about it and do something to keep it, you can't rely on someone else to care about it for the both of you. Those are the 2 things that have really driven me today and why I'm still with Pheasants Forever. And that's what we stand for in those two quotes. With that, is there any questions?
What is the outlook for the pheasant population within the state, considering that we have less grassland put it on than was originally there?
So Michigan pheasant numbers have stayed really stable. They're not phenomenal population numbers. They're regionally good. The thumb, Verona, kind of that northern thumb area still holds really good populations of birds. You can find them throughout Lenawee and southern Eaton, Jackson County. You can find good strongholds of birds, but the population has remained very stable across the state. That being said, we're also coming into a generation and a better understanding of grassland habitat and the need and importance for it. Historically, southern Michigan, most of southern Michigan was oak savanna forest. And now it's mixed deciduous forest and mixed coniferous forest. And, you know, we're starting to understand that, hey, these grasslands are important and they're supposed to be here. So there is an uptick in state lands actually managing for grasslands, prescribed fire. We're seeing agricultural cooperatives that are saying, don't mow our ditch. That ditch needs to stay wild. So the forecast is hopefully trending up. Our rural mail carrier counts, although the number of hens and chicks seen were down this year, the size of the brood was up. We're still waiting on final numbers for that, but preliminary hearsay numbers looks like we're going to be stable, a tick up in our pheasant population for this year. So the nice thing is we're not going down, we're at least staying here. And it gives us a baseline to eventually start creeping up.
With the amount of clear cutting that's been being done in the northern part of the state, is there any thought to convert some of what was forest into grassland, or is that possible?
It's easier to convert forest into grassland than it is a parking lot. I will say that. So, you know, that is going to come down to local management. Historically, Michigan used to hold, why am I drawing a blank? Greater prairie chickens. The last greater prairie chickens, a prairie endemic species. The last known population of them was actually right here in Grayling at the Air Force Base. They were around until the 80s, early 90s. We still have sharp-tailed grouse in the eastern Upper Peninsula. Our grassland habitat is viable. It's going to come down to local management saying, hey, historically, this was grass or this wasn't grass, and this is what we need to manage for. But as you saw from that graph, you know, whether that be a case of early logging in the 18 and early 1900s, creating agricultural haylands up here, you know, there was historically grasslands up here. And I think there is opportunity to maintain those grasslands and reestablish them in parts of the state where it's viable.
Since we don't really have any pheasants up here, there were pheasants at one time. So it's possible to be populated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it is definitely viable. It's a matter of habitat management at that point. And like I said, you know, this comes down to the local working groups, the counties, the state. What does the county and the people feel is important for here? We will always advocate for grasslands, but we'll also always advocate for what should be here. Like, I'm not going to go put a grassland in, you know, the Seney Swamp. It wasn't there. But if there is evidence of historical grasslands here and thriving, there is definitely a case for, hey, let's reestablish a grassland up here and provide this habitat for wildlife, water quality, woodcock migration and dancing, whatever it may be.
What size of an area needs to exist to manage to support any kind of pheasant population? And can you have pocket populations, or is it?
You can have regional populations. Unfortunately, my brain is not remembering the exact number. For some reason in my head, it's 600 yards. So what I'm going with 600 yards is when you think about a road, that is what we call an edge, tree line. edge. Anything that's the hard line and transition, that's an edge. 600 yards is the number that's sticking in my brain. I need to double check that to be 100% accurate, but 600 yards from that edge is where your edge species thrive. What are edge species? Raccoons, skunks, deer, turkeys. Unfortunately, the majority of the nest raiders, such as raccoons, skunks, and snakes. So anywhere within 600 yards, that's where you're going to find them utilizing that habitat. Now, if you have a 200-acre plot, that's 600 yards, you still have a really good core area that's intact. As soon as you put a road right through the middle of that, that core area shrinks 1/10 the size or smaller. And so that's the biggest fight that we have, from my opinion and what I see with wildlife numbers. Someone that's a lot more educated than me might disagree with this assessment, but from what I see, it's nest predators. There's a lot more skunks and raccoons out there than we've ever had. And that's where our bottleneck is coming in, is we don't have quality nest cover, and there's a lot more places where the overlap is happening and we can't have greater nest success. So that's, again, just kind of an opinion from me. I haven't dove back into the biology of Michigan. I've been back for a grand total of 6 months. Michigan's very different than Idaho. So trying to relearn some of that. But with that being said, the regional pockets are definitely viable. I mean, look at the sharptails, for example, up in the eastern UP. There's not vast, expansive grasslands like Montana and North Dakota and South Dakota and Kansas and Nebraska. They don't have those, but they're still making it work and surviving. It'd be a matter of making sure that the right birds came into the area, migrated themselves naturally, expanded themselves in this area, and adapted towards the area.
Well, the next question. If you had the grassland, if you had the space and all that, do you put pheasants in that area and let them repopulate, or do you have to wait for them to find it?
Unfortunately, the best scientific data out there shows that introduction of pheasant populations is a waste of money. The greatest success ever found on a study was 2% made it through their first winter. And of that 2%, traditionally 1 or 2 birds made it to the second winter. So you figure you're putting $20, $25 or more into a bird and put into that habitat to have it die within 4 months. It's just not viable. So at this point, it's a matter of presenting the habitat. One of the big things is corridors and making sure that there is an access way to that. Now, here, you're lucky. You're on the edge of the zone. Isabella County still holds numbers of birds. You can still find them decently well. There is a natural corridor with the ag and grass and haylands down there that it's not a huge leap. It may take some time, but it would be there. In the meantime, though, those grasslands are very important for the woodcock migration, woodcock dancing. Grouse use a lot of edge habitat and utilize those shrubs and bushes that grow on the edge of the forest. Deer love the edge of the forest. Elk love the edge of the forest. There's a lot of other things that it's benefiting, and over time, as pieces are getting strung together, the populations will expand.
So what's the source of the mortality on pheasants that are introduced? Is that predation or inability to?
Predation or exposure. The big one is predation. It's a lot like
Somebody eats them or something eats them.
Yeah, it's a lot. I compare it a lot to, livestock, right? If you take a dairy cow and go stick it in the deserts of eastern Idaho, that cow is going to be dead in a week or less. It doesn't know how to live there. Same with, we bred that out of dairy cows for a very good reason. You get those grazing cattle, the, open range cattle, the beef cattle that are adapted for that and bred for that, they're going to survive. We've done the same thing with our captive birds. We've bred them to be put out and to be shot or to be, put into a backyard or, they've lost that survival instinct. It's been bred out of them, for a good reason and for intentionally. So predation is a big one. They just have not been exposed to predators. They don't know how to react around predators. because the big scary human didn't bother them other than putting food out there. And the other one is exposure. They're not keen on how do we find the best place to put ourselves to,
Relocating wild birds isn't part of the program.
not at the time. And that simply comes down to we follow the best available science, and there is not great available science at this time to support that. Not saying it couldn't happen in the future. Science changes all the time. We change with it. Maybe in the future we find that relocating wild birds from Minnesota would do really well here, and that'll be part of the program. But for now, we don't have the science that backs that.
How does the DNR, are you guys engaged with the DNR? Are they pretty cooperative and maybe grasp on it?
Yes. Yep. Ben Beeman and Adam Bump are very good friends from what I'm told, and they talk quite a bit. DNR is very supportive of our program. We work hand in hand, mostly because it's a very mutual relationship between the two of us. We want to do good things on public land. You guys want good things done on public land. Let's work together and get it done. We've also started working very collaboratively, especially in Zone 3 for woodcock with Rough Grouse Society. And that comes down to a rule of scale. If a chapter has $5,000 and a Rough Grouse chapter has $5,000, and we're doing projects right next to each other on the same state game area, you might get 30 acres done between those two projects. But if you go to that same contractor with $10,000, you'll get 45 or 50 acres done because they're guaranteed more money. I relied on that very heavily out west, partnerships and collaboration. So in Zone 3, where we were doing a lot of very similar work right next to each other, often with two different contractors working next to each other on the same place, we started working very collaboratively down there. You know, we're here for wildlife. Let's get wildlife habitat done. We don't have the luxury or the ability to hide on our side of the fence and say, we're the pheasant people. No, we're here for wildlife. Let's do it.
Very state game area. It used to be quite a foot take area.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still do that down there or not?
They still have the program down there. I'm not sure if Barry, I think Barry is still in the program. I'd have to double check that to be sure. That program did get extended for another year, so it will continue this year.
The birds that are released down there, where are those birds coming from? Private stock?
Yeah, they're coming from game bird producers. I'm not sure exactly which companies and which growers and breeders are providing those, but I do know that they come from game bird breeders, much like Wild Wings up here would get.
What are you doing with the private landowners? Are you getting back into CRP or getting some
Yeah.
put back in?
So CRP is a huge tool that we utilize here in the state of Michigan, and I will say it's an underutilized tool here in the state of Michigan. Back when I was living in Sandusky, a acre rental rate was hovering around $90 to $95. The best rental rate I saw in Eastern Idaho was $33 an acre, and people were flocking to it. And so I think it's an underutilized resource here, but CRP is a huge proponent for what we do here in the state, trying to reestablish grasslands. We're also, like I said, we're working on ag efficiency. The Conservation Reserve Program. It's got the omen of the set-aside program, where you sign a 10 or 15-year contract, you enroll your agricultural land to be put into grasslands habitat. You get a yearly rental rate per acre from the Farm Service Agency. Goes to the farmer, they manage that, maintain it, keep it in habitat. Like I said, it can vary anywhere from $30 an acre to as high as $120 an acre. Those numbers may be different now because that was a 2018 data set, so times have changed a little bit since then. But you know, historically, you're looking $30 to $100 an acre that you're getting to take that land out of agricultural production and turn it into habitat for a 10 or 15-year stint.
And provide public access. Right?
Not mandatory.
Not mandatory.
That is not mandatory on Conservation Reserve Program. Now with the Hunter Access Program and our public access to habitat, If you have CRP and you have 20 acres or more of intact grassland, you'll get an extra $10 an acre to provide access. So now we're looking at somewhere in the realms of $35, $45 an acre as opposed to $25, $30 an acre to allow access. But CRP does not mandate that you allow access onto that property. It can be an excellent wildlife habitat, like you said, kind of reserve of.
What about the green strips? I know Iowa's been pushing there. One of the colleges out there did some studies and said there was an economic advantage that you conserve the soil, reduce the requirements for fertilizer,
Mhm.
all by leaving these green strips in that they plowed under for the corn.
So that goes into kind of the ag efficiency and soil health that we really are promoting in agricultural areas. We've really gotten a better handle on soil health and what's going on with agricultural land as a whole. And we've realized that for ag efficiency, having a living root in the soil 12 months out of the year is more beneficial towards the producer and more beneficial for the soil, which then keeps building on itself. Gabe Brown out of North Dakota is probably one of the largest proponents of this. And in his book, Turning from Dirt to Soil, he talks about when he started his practice of converting and focusing on soil health, leaving living root, doing things for the health of the soil. It took him 3 hours to infiltrate 1 inch of water on his ground. Handful of years back, they had historic flooding and rains in North Dakota. His was the only farm that did not flood. And when he went and tested afterwards, he was infiltrating 3 inches of water in 45 seconds. So from 1 inch in 3 hours to 3 inches in 45 seconds is a huge benefit. So all that moisture is staying in the soil. It's not running off and disappearing. You're getting more life in the soil, more macro invertebrates and worms and rhizomes and fungi. And you're creating a healthier soil, which then requires less impact, less fertilizer, less tillage, things like that. So that's a lot of what our gals are doing, is promoting that soil health. And also, there are some operations where you don't need to put a straight rate of nitrogen on the field. You only need, X pounds to the acre here and half as much over here. So they're working on things like that as well. But yeah, filter strips, green belts, things like that, hugely beneficial, as well as creating some type of cover crop, something that's creating living roots in the soil 12 months out of the year. Radishes and turnips to create what they call macro pores for infiltration, all very important things. And we work a lot in that world.
Okay, Jacob, thank you for coming
Thank you.
out. Thank all you folks for showing up, and thank everybody who signed on to the live stream. Next time we get together, Bruce Barlow will be with us talking about gems. And that's it.